So today I'm going to talk about rendering to you, okay? And this is what we need to do to create something that looks in 3D. So here I've took my Eco Superhero character, and you can see he's a male superhero that's going to promote sustainability. He has got a knee on his chest to promote the earth. He's wearing a mask. He's got some boots on and he's got some gloves on. So kind of simple. But what I'm going to try and do is add colour to this to make it look three-dimensional. So the way that you do that is you think about where the light is. So what I've done is trace over what I would do if I was you. You already have an example like this in your project that you've drawn a character, maybe with a limb being moved. You trace over it on a new piece of paper, maybe use your laptop as a sort of light box to shine through, and you get your shape that you need, and that's what I've done in this case. But then you decide where the light is. Now normally light always comes from above, okay? The light in a room, the light of the sun, and rendering is about making something look three-dimensional by adding light and shade or highlights and shadows, okay? So the first thing we want to think about, if this is his head, right, and his body, I'm just going to make it stand out. So I've drawn it all in a pen, right, but now I'm just going to draw around the outside of him to make him stand out a little bit stronger. I'm doing this quickly. You've got much more time. As a task, I would say this is a homework task. It would take about 30 minutes to do accurately. Okay, so I'm going around all the line around the outside. And the rule I'm applying to this is that if I can see two sides of an edge, it's a thin line, okay? And if I can only see one side of an edge, it's a thick line. So I can't see the other side of his head, so that's thick. So basically the outline that goes all around the outside is going to be thick. It'd also be thick there because I can't see underneath his chin and I can't see there, but then his body's connected, so that would be the same. So that makes it start to stand out if you see a little bit better. And now I'm going to actually start rendering it. So, and I'm just going to draw in some more of these details so we can see them a bit more clearly with my fine pen. So this is just a normal fine point pen. Okay, I'm just going to draw in his details of his eyes so it stands out a little bit more. And there's his mouth. He's giving us a smile because he's saving the earth. There's the E on the front of his chest. Okay. Again, I'm doing this quick. You've got much more time than me to do this. So this is my Eco Superhero character. I'll draw in his pants and his boots, and there's his gloves. Alright, so we get the basic shape of our character now. Yes, I've made him stand out with some fine point pen, and that idea that I just used is called a thick and thin line technique. So I use a thick line in some places and a fine line in others. Okay? So now I'm ready to start rendering. So if I know the light is coming from the top, okay, I'm going to do all of his body the sort of same. So that means anything that's on the front of him is going to be nice and light. So I'm just going to go over this nice and lightly. Right? So that's all of his costume, nice and light. And I can go all of it. See, I'm using the same angle of my pencil as I do it. Okay, so that's nice and light. Now I need to go to the darkest part. Well, this part of his body, this part's going to be the darkest because it's furthest from the light. So I'm actually going to go over that and make that darker. I'm probably going to change direction there a little bit, right, to make it nice and dark. Okay, and this part of his body is going to be nice and dark as well. Okay, and I'm probably going to even make that dark because it's going to be in shadow because his arm is in the way over his leg. So that becomes the darkest. So I'm going to go over that a couple of times, which leaves me then with a sort of medium. Okay, so this is probably the part of his body that's the lightest because that's really in contact with the light, and the other parts are probably a little bit darker. So this is the sort of medium colour in between the darkest and the lightest. So it might be a little bit darker under his chin there because of the shadow. Okay, and the same now. So that's all of his body. Okay, maybe a little bit more shade underneath his chin to show it's a little bit darker. Then for his hair, I'm just going to make it like this. So that's his hair. So it's going to be lightest on the top, right? I'm putting some reflection there, so some highlights where it's reflecting off, but it's going to be darker on the side where it's further from the light, which is the top of the figure. In the same way for his mask, it's probably going to be the darkest there. So I'm going to do that slightly darker again so it stands out, and maybe in between a little bit darker. So I've got sort of light, dark and a medium in between those three shades. It's not the same as colouring in, okay? Colouring in is not what this is. You're getting different tones of the colour. Now for his boots and his gloves, I'm going to do, again, all the way across, but then I'm going to make it darker on this side. So I'm going to actually make it a stronger yellow because there's no reflection. In the same way, that's going to be nice and light. Right, this is going to be really dark over on this side, and this is going to be lighter. This is probably going to be the lightest because that's probably catching the light, so I'm not actually going to go all the way across there. I'm going to leave some parts where the actual light is reflecting off it, and again probably nice and light there. So I get the idea of how I can actually start to render my character to make him look more three-dimensional. Does that make sense to people? So I could go into more detail here, like with the E, I could do that a different colour, but that's how I'm rendering him to make him look three-dimensional. And if you think of just about a normal sort of cube shape, and I create it again for you so you get the understanding. So if that's a cube, and there's the light from the top, we're going to have the lightest, the darkest in the medium. So that's going to be here, the darkest amount of shade. Okay. This is going to be the lightest, so I might even put some reflections in there going across where the light's reflecting off the top of the cube box, and then I'll have somewhere in between the two. And it's how much pressure I'm applying to the pencil is actually making it look three-dimensional, and that use of shadow as well. So now I've really gone back and I'm making this one much darker because my medium was a little bit too close to me, to the actual other one that was the darkest. And then, but I take my time in my shading. But notice how I always shade in the same direction. I'm not sort of shading like this, like colouring in. I'm trying to shade in the same direction all the time because that will help me get the idea across that it's three-dimensional. And basically that's how you would render your eco superhero.